which as always, almost always, is coming from inside my motorhome, Hymer B514. And so, as always, with any live chat, if you've got any questions or anything like that, please ask them, and it doesn't have to be limited to what I'm actually going to be talking about today. Now, today's live chat actually is really a continuation of yesterday's, when the subject was about, is it worth buying a motorhome, or buying a motorhome in the spring of this year. Hello, Luke. Hello, Nathaniel. And here, what this is largely based on one of the comments which I got from yesterday's, which was a really good source. Thanks really from Jeremy here for his comment, which actually brought this one around. So to a large extent, they could say this was actually written by Jeremy rather than me. And now my advice is, what I personally believed is that we should what one should buy, or I would like to buy, or what I recommend buying, is to get a classic vehicle, and because I think that's going to work out much better. If you buy something like a classic Carthago or Hymer or something like that, and say from 20 years old, and that may give you far less problems than if you bought a cheap motorhome from today. But of course, if you buy a motorhome from 20 years ago plus, you might have less problems with the habitation area, but you could well end up having more problems with the front end of things, the engine. So that is largely what I want to have a look at today. Luke's just pointed out that I can actually get sidetracked when people ask things which are not relevant. And yes, I suppose that is a good point. So I'll try not to get too sidetracked with it. But there's 4 really good reasons why you shouldn't buy a classic motorhome. So there's 4 reasons why you shouldn't take my advice. At least 4. There might be more. You might think of some more during this presentation. The first thing is on emissions, and this is a problem wherever you go. At least in Europe. I don't know what the situation is like in the United States. Well, I think I do understand what the situation is like in the United States, because I believe in California has certain rules, but other towns as well. Here, I am in a place called Heilbronn. Heilbronn is 80 kilometers to the north of Stuttgart. Last year, or maybe last January, or maybe it was in December of 2022, Heilbronn introduced a green zone, a low emission zone, and the thing is this, that it occupies a very large part of the city. Indeed, as I traveled last year from Stuttgart from the CMT trade fair, I came up, I had to go through I thought they'd let me off, and I think they did let me off. But when I left here in my van in February, I had to do a 32-kilometer detour to avoid the low emission zone. You may be thinking that surely having to burn an extra 3 liters of fuel is putting more emissions into the air, and that would be a very good point. But the thing is this, you're not putting the where the danger is perceived to be. 43 years ago in London, there was the then mayor Ken Livingstone was elected, and he came up with a policy of trying to get rid of cars in the centre of London, something which incidentally is now being accepted by everybody, but at the time seems being somewhat controversial. I can remember a cartoon which was put in a trying to think of a suitably neutral term for this, but they had this sort of this information leaflet which went round every home in the London area, and there was this cartoon where there was some children in the streets, and there was a car going past, and the car was firing bullets, the bullets being the lead which was then in petrol above all, and which was poisoning the air. Now, I do accept the fact that there may well be all sorts of things with any form, burning whatever you're burning. Certainly, I can see the difference. I can recall going to certain places, and you could absolutely taste the air, which maybe it wasn't just coming from cars, it was coming from other things as well. But I mean, if you go to Moscow, I mean, I haven't been there now for a while, but more than 10 years, but there, particularly in the winter, there is this utterly, it's in your mouth, this contamination, this pollution, and I bet it's in lots of other places as well. I certainly don't seem to feel it as I used to. I'm not saying this just comes from cars. It may come from other things. So I'm trying to justify the policy now. But the thing is this: is that older vehicles may not be permitted. Now there is a campaign here in Germany, which was started about 6-7 years ago, which with the idea which was to give a specific number plate to classic motorhomes, so that they would be somehow exempt from these low emission stuff. And but I mean, that's as far as I can see so far, that's actually come to nothing. Actually, there's also another thing on this. I was putting vegetable oil in my vehicle, and so I was burning rapeseed oil. And I did write in 2008 to the German Ministry of, I can't remember which one I did write to. I wrote to some German ministry. Was it the environment or was it the transport? Well, anyway, whichever one it was, I wrote to somebody. And and I said, you know what, my vehicle is burning. I'm not putting any well, I might have been putting something in, but I'll be putting far less than a new Porsche was putting into the air. And so therefore I thought that my vehicle was far more eco-friendly. So I had a Mercedes and I was using it to burn. I was burning, it was vegetable oil. Now I got a letter back saying, thanking me for my good idea, but that was the end of it. I think they sent the same letter to everybody. This LEZ or ULEZ, ultra low emission zone, as it's called in London. And in London, this is a major political factor because it's expanding all the time. And when I was in London, so I watched things. In fact, it's affected election results as well. So the growth of the ultra low emission zone. Now, but we'll see this all over the place as well. And now I've got it here. Jeremy here has written this very good point. So I'm now quoting him directly because I've heard these stories of people getting huge bills and things. But here, I'm a direct quote here. A guy with an older Laika motorhome was on a campsite near London for his holiday. He got home and he found he'd got a £2,000 fine through his letterbox. Yeah, this van here I can go into the I've got a green sticker for Germany, but the previous owners did something to the vehicle to ensure that it would have that green sticker. So for example, normally this is what we 2006 a Euro 4, something like that. 2015 I think it's Euro 5, and so there's places where now Euro 6 is being demanded. And so that is something which is a very good reason why you shouldn't buy a classic vehicle. Next thing is the following. It's on the weight. Now, in many industries over the past 20 years or so, downsizing as far as weight is concerned is been a major factor. So I mean, we do see this, for example, now you see these super light materials. I've talked about them in plenty of videos. Things are getting lighter, easier to carry, and the reason for this is because anybody who's got a driving license issued after 1996 has a limit of 3.5 tons the driving. Now, my driving license, I think 7.5 tons. In fact, one of the categories finished quite recently. I was entitled to drive a bus or something with 17 people on it. Totally ridiculous. I should never have been given that in the first place. That was something which was grandfathered in when I passed my driving test, which was in September 1990. As long as you could drive a car, you could drive all sorts of other stuff. Now you can't. So if you want to drive a bigger motorhome and you pass your test after 1996, I think that's the same throughout the European Union, then you've got to do another exam. I know in the United States you can just drive once you've got a car license, you can drive just about anything. I think the rules are. I'm not certain, but that really is something that you might want to consider. Now, older vehicles are much heavier than newer vehicles. For example, if you were to get yourself a motorhome based on something like a Mercedes 410D, something like that, sort of a classic Mercedes van, which and if you don't even change the back, you can't even stand up in it because it's so low. But those things are empty. I believe that they weigh over 3.5 tons, or maybe all approaching 3.5 tons. The bits that go into a motorhome will weigh. I mean, talking about here the furniture and the infrastructure for the habitation area, but not including water and what have you. But you're looking at least 200 kilos of stuff as a rule, and this, of course, if you start off with a vehicle, the base vehicles really have not, well, if you've got a Fiat from, say, 30 years ago, Fiat Ducato from 30 years, or Ford Transit from 30 years ago, and compared to the one today, then there's a slight weight difference, but there's not a huge amount of weight difference. Maybe with the example I gave with Mercedes 410 was a rather unfortunate one, but it's the interior bits which now weigh much less than they did before. So there's another consideration. An older vehicle will weigh more for comparing like to like, of course. Carthago often each year it says, oh, it's now made its vehicles 20 kilos lighter or something like that, and 20 kilos mightn't sound like very much. I mean, you bring that when you go shopping, you bring 20 kilos worth of food back with you or something like that, the fact is, if they can do this every single year, after 10 years, they've got 200 kilos or something of that nature, if they actually continue it. So there's a good reason. Now, there's another very important thing here. If I take the body of the motorhome, and now as far as campervans are concerned, this is less of an issue. But with motorhomes are glued together. So you've got the walls, unless you get a monocoque, which can produce their own problems. But if you basically you've got a wall there, which is glued onto a wall there, which is glued onto a wall there, it's glued on. I mean, that is what it is effectively. It's glue. It might be called glue, but that's what it is. And in time, motorhomes drive down roads and they go bump, 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 and everything's shaking around in the back. And eventually these walls are going to tear apart, come apart in little bits here and there, little cracks, but they will appear. Maybe not little cracks, but they sort of just pull themselves, and you have to be on top of this, because if water gets in, and it will get in, it doesn't matter where, the water gets into everything, then you have a problem. The water will rot the panels or whatever it is that you've got there. Now, when I got this van, 5 days before I bought this van, I went to see another one. It was a Hymer B624, and that it was won at an auction, and thing was some of the problems were declared, so we knew what they were. But when we did a water test, an ingress test at the back, we found out that panels had to be completely replaced at the back because water had got in and it was scarcely visible. And this is a major issue. So any motorhome you buy, I mean, I've heard of people buying new vehicles. I've even heard of people buying new good vehicles where water's got into them. But this is a really serious problem which could occur. So what you need to do is to if you buy any vehicle, to give it a water test. Now you can from I know Lidl had something on for about €10. They had these water detectors. I've forgotten the correct word for them now. I've forgotten the word. Anyway, it'll come back. You can do that. What we used last year, because I was with the company, so I mean, I used more expensive kit for doing that. But that's definitely something. So the water ingress is a major problem. If you do check it, bear in mind that what you can't see is how much stress has been put on the walls over the previous years, and so that's also something which really wants to be considered. Now there is a solution. There's an advert which has come up on my feed on YouTube 2 or 3 times, and somebody gets a colander and they put this stuff over it, and then they put water in it. And I don't know who actually manufactures this, but they showed this for using it for sealing things in homes, in the roofs and other things. If the product is absolutely translucent, and it cost about €15. I don't know how much €15 would do, but there are other products which I can name, such as liquid rubber, which comes from the United States, which I used on my last vehicle. It wasn't that cheap. It was quite expensive. You had to mix 2 chemicals, and then you give it a good stir, and then you painted it onto the vehicle. And some of the there are things as well where you have to first of all strip all the silicone off, and then you reseal it. I mean, it's quite a job to actually do it. It takes quite a long time. But leaks, water getting in, and it's really difficult to see where water gets into vehicles. Really is difficult. So I do want to make that one really clear. There's another thing as well which I need to talk about, which is spares. Now, if you buy a 1990 Fiat Ducato or Ford Transit or Mercedes or whatever, you'll find the spares for the engine bit will be no problem, but some of the other spares are a problem. For example, in this vehicle I've got here, I know that if anything happens to some of the strip lighting, 2 of the strip lightings over the kitchen, lights are off at the moment, but I'll show in a different video, then that's it. I've got to think, I can't replace it because I can't get the parts. The parts are no longer around. And now, if you find something like, okay, your fridge goes or something like this probably will mean you have to take the fridge out. If you've got a fridge, I bought a van with the fridge didn't work, couldn't get the spares, so that was it. The fridge was gone. Fridge was 20 years old nearly. This vehicle, you may have seen the video. I bought it with a 3-way fridge in it, and I replaced it with the fridge I had in my previous vehicle because I wanted a 2-way fridge rather than have to keep continually topping up with gas, which is the problem with the 3-way fridge. And so anyway, spares are now one area you might have a really big problem, and I've heard of this. For example, somebody I knew who bought an EuraMobil, whatever it's pronounced, and you've got these bits that go on the back, or you've got the so you've got your back wall, and you've got the housing where the lights are, for example. Well, that broke or fell off or whatever, and it was impossible to get a replacement for a vehicle that was 20 years old or something like that. And that has to be on. If many things you can repair yourself, or you can say, well, I don't need it as long as original. But when your light housing goes, then that is trying to think, well, how can I get around that one? That's a major issue in itself. Now, I do very much. I continue to urge people to look at buying a quality vehicle when you can. So if you've got the money, go for quality rather than anything else. But if you say you've only got a certain amount of cash to spend, so if you had the 40,000, which I mentioned yesterday, as I just picked this one up, and you get something like this, which I've got, rather than buy a well, you're not going to find a motorhome at €40,000, but not so long ago you could, though. But rather than buy something from a manufacturer, you get something like Palmovsky Exgo or something, or Jotti line, although Jotti line has got better, which is but poor quality, and with the risks that then entails. There's so many things with a motorhome that could potentially go wrong. Anyway, good. Right, so they were the points I wanted to make here. Thanks to Jeremy for pointing them out. I shall now have a look at the questions. Oh, sorry, lots of questions. Sorry, I didn't think so. So Luke mentioned that is a problem to lives people. I get sidetracked, and yeah, so I hope I didn't get sidetracked then. Right, so Nathaniel mentions, what about VW classic campers? Yeah, but they're slightly different for some parts with a camper van as opposed to a motorhome, because the camper van uses the body of the original vehicle. Now, there still could be problems with water ingress. For example, my camper van, the first one I had a roof which had been stuck onto it by Malibu, or by Carthago, I should say. So it had the bottom bit, which was from Volkswagen, and it stuck a roof on itself with a high roof. And obviously there'll be seals along there. So I mean, theoretically, I suppose water could get there, could get through the sliding windows and things of this nature. But there's less of a risk of water ingress with a camper van. It's effectively, I mean, I had a car where there was water ingress. My Mercedes, the water got into it, and so not into the boot, that is, not into the back. Good. Right. Right. So Nathaniel says that the classic vehicle plates are black. So what would I call a classic? Yeah, that's a really good question. Now, I think in most countries a classic is pre-1975 or 1975. I think that's correct. I'm not certain. Or maybe it's 40 years. I don't know. What I'm thinking here of in this case, because I suggest that you take your money and then you see what that money would actually buy, and then you go for a quality brand. So I suppose if you said, well, I've got 80,000 available, in which case you must be really well off. But if you get your hands on 80,000, then say, well, okay, maybe buy a classic. In this case, maybe buy a Carthago, which is 4 or 5 years old, something like that, rather than buy a new vehicle. So in that case, that would be the classic. If you've got that type of money, of course, is less realistic. Most people maybe have 30, 40,000. You've got 30,000. I would consider a classic to be something like around 2,000, something like that, or 40 in this case. In my case here, 2006, something along those lines. I hope that maybe I used the wrong word. Maybe I should have. But it's difficult to find a suitable word. Say, well, you buy a quality brand with the amount of money that you've got, with that your money permits, something like that. Right. Question here: what about historical motorhomes in Europe? If I've understood that right, can you buy sort of what I would term the classic vehicle in Europe? Yes. Well, I personally would. Personally, I want a left-hand drive vehicle because that's the way I spend more time in countries that drive on the right than drive on the left. And in the United Kingdom, anyway, and Ireland, above all, the standard of driving is very good, so it doesn't make so much difference that you're on the wrong side of the road. Sim asks, if it's all about saving the planet, new vehicles would not be produced. Yeah, well, no, I don't think that's. I think that's a rather bad argument, because I appreciate that if there were no vehicles, then nobody would get knocked down. There'd be no deaths on the road. Yes, but then again, there'd be deaths from other things, and if there were no vehicles, I mean, how would you get your food to market, for example? So I can't really accept that argument. Okay, so I hear that there'll be a Euro 7 as from next year. I didn't know that. A 90s transit-based auto-sleeper motorhome is monocoque and surely less likely to get water ingress around 2.8 tons empty. Yes, probably. There is, I don't want to say that there's absolutely no risk of water ingress from monocoque, but the risk is less. There are other problems, but the risk is less because the stresses, which are the joints, there isn't a joint as such. It's all one unit. So there may be problems in other parts of it though. All right, old VW bay window T2, 3, 25, T3, T4 all have good parts and availability, especially Westfalia conversions. Yeah, I mean, there's no difficulty at all. Okay, I mean, I admit it's been some time since I was driving my Volkswagen. Now it's been more 11, 12 years ago. But, you know, when I had need gear problems and other things. I mean, in one case, I just went to the scrapyard in Rainham, I think it was, in East London, and I got what I was looking for there. And yeah, there's no problem for finding VW parts, I believe. Maybe the older ones there may be some more difficulties, but on the whole, it's not so much the engine though it's the problem, it's the habitation area, and particularly the exterior part, I think, of the habitation area. Gez writes, good to I'm still alive and broadcasting. Well, I'm broadcasting every day, I thought. Right. Okay, so here's a good point. Buying new is not always an option. My 2000 Sportsmobil is a work in progress, but it's not making me poor, and I get to travel and I do cool things. But yeah, sure. I do appreciate that buying new vehicles is not for most people. It's just a dream. It's just not real. It's totally unrealistic. To actually do that. I do appreciate, in which case the warnings I've given in this video become even more realistic. Jason writes, hello Alan, great to see you live. Thank you. And Seeker, thanks. And Jason said, would I ever consider taking my rig to the United States and travel the States? You know what? I've thought of this many times. I know that there are problems though when you actually you take your vehicle there, then I can't remember what the problems are. Friends of mine are currently in Argentina, but they set off from in fact, I've got a video with before they left, and so they've gone to Canada first, and then I would do it. The advantage of actually taking your own vehicle is this. I mean, you'd have to stay for 2 or 3 years, which, I mean, I think to make it payable. But it's this: you can take all your own stuff. Because if you rent something, I always tell people to rent before they buy. But if you rent something there, then you've got to buy all the stuff that goes in it. You've got to buy all your pots. And here, look, I got one of these. That was a present. You've got to buy all your pots and things like this, and all the stuff you're taking with you. And not only that, if you're going to be traveling around, you're going to need a stack of clothes. Or what do you do? Bring all your clothes with you, or do you have to buy it when you're there? And your sheets and your blankets and everything. So there is an argument for taking your own vehicle there. The thing is this, though. I mean, if I broke down in the United States, which is, I think, quite likely in the circumstances, because you'd be doing lots and lots of traveling, it's bound to happen before long. Then can I get the parts which would be near? I mean, this vehicle that I've got, I don't suppose anybody's ever seen one in the United States before, and it's always the problem when we see things here in Europe. We see somebody's got an American car or something like that, and we've never heard of, or an American RV, and then you think, yeah, but what about the parts? They cost an absolute fortune to buy. I know there are some specialized companies which import things from the United States, but it's always the cost. Certainly, I would consider traveling though to the United States in this vehicle. I think I'd really like that one. I had a friend on the phone 3 or 4 days ago, and he showed me around his place in El Paso. So we showed via on WhatsApp, and I thought, oh yeah, I've got to get there. I was speaking to somebody, a friend in California, had stayed at his place in Santa Barbara. And I was thinking, yeah, I really want to go back to Santa Barbara. The United States is the #1 country for scenic beauty in the world. You've got such a huge variety sometimes in quite small areas. Even if you take California, you've got deserts to high mountains, and within a matter of 100 or so kilometers. Absolutely outstanding. So this to me, I'd really like to do this, United States and Canada together. That would really suit me. I mean, the thing is this, I think I've got enough for the rest of my life just by traveling around Italy, Germany, and Poland. But that would be marvelous. You can put your vehicle on a container. It's about €2,000, something like that. I think that's one way, so it'd be 4,000 if you're thinking of coming back. But what bothers me, though, it is the paperwork and the temporary importation procedure. And, to find something which is not right or something like that, or you've got to get papers for something which you can't get. And this is what bothers me with anything like this. I like things to be absolutely simple. And when you start messing around with trying to get papers for things which sometimes you can't get, then I was even talking to somebody last week about this, trying to get a piece of paper for a camper van, and this was within Europe. Yeah, yeah, I can walk across the Mexican border to become an American citizen. Yeah, and yeah, it would be, Jason. That would be absolutely superb to do something like that, but. Anyway, let's see. Maybe what I'll do is, I've had a friend's actually offered to lend me his motorhome, though I suspect I wouldn't be able to drive it because it's so big. I really would like to go to the United States, but anyway, we'll see. Okay, good. Thanks very much for watching. I hope I don't want to put people off from buying, because that remains my advice. But I always want to point out the downsides as well, to give people a fair appreciation about what is good. What I try to do with this channel is that I try always to tell the truth and sort of give people correct advice based on my experience and knowledge. And this is probably not the best thing to do with a motorhome channel, because what people want to have motorhome channel is they want to have their dreams come true. You want people to say they want to hear how wonderful things are. And when they hear how wonderful this is, that is great, then that makes them feel good. But that is not what I see as the objective. What I'm doing here, I want to actually tell people the truth of the matter. Okay, Sim says, I like vintage vehicles. You're unlikely to put me off. I don't think I like vintage ones. I have never tried to drive a Volkswagen Type 1. But I've heard so many bad stories. Mind you, I did drive this little Fiat, the Fiat 123P. And it wasn't as, I did a car review of it. I used to own a business magazine, and so obviously we did reviews, but I did this one as a bit of a joke. In those days, I mean, people done it on YouTube now, but I mean, in those days, 1997, everybody was doing whatever, some flash cars. I thought I'd do the little Fiat, the Fiat 123P, but it wasn't as bad as I was expecting. But it's not the sort of thing I'd want to drive on a daily basis. So anyway, thanks very much for watching, and tomorrow we've got, I think the video is a Panama collection. I was going today to do the Van Ext pickup truck, but that now is going to be on Tuesday. So thanks for being with me today, and all the best, and bye for now.